Good morning. I think it's day 15. We're leaving Wittenberg today, but I thought I'd give you a room tour before we left. Closet, desk, bed, the view. I've also been reusing this plastic bottle for like 2 weeks, so I think it's time to say goodbye. On that note about the plastic water bottle, is like in restaurants and stuff, a lot of times they gave us like glass bottles, so like they did like the deposit refund system, which is something we talked about in my marine science class actually, so it's cool to see that. But they did a deposit refund system where they would get their money back once they gave the glasses back, but they did the same thing with like the big bottles. But I am kind of confused on why they don't just like drink tap water. Instead of drinking out of water bottles, though I did know girls who did this like my freshman year. My suite mates would like buy bottled water and only drink bottled water when we literally had like one of those water bottle refilling stations in our dorm, and like they would take the like single-use plastic water bottles and put them in their reusable bottle, and I was like, doesn't really make sense. But I just think it's odd that they don't use tap water because it feels more sustainable. So we headed out of Wittenberg and back to Berlin.
What?
Leaving Wittenberg.
Wittenberg.
I want to learn to drive a train. How are you doing today, Savannah?
Pretty cold and tired, but it's our last day, so we gotta make it right.
After a quick stop for dinners, we stopped at the Checkpoint Charlie Museum. Checkpoint Charlie was the place where foreigners would cross between the East and the West. Here you can see where the checkpoint still stands. The Checkpoint Charlie Museum really talked a lot about the Cold War, and while we could talk about the museum design, which was kind of confusing, I did appreciate that they made the content accessible to English, German, Russian, and I believe French speakers, because, you know, these were things that were concerning all of those populations. And it was cool to hear about the things like the American man who, you know, you could see his passport with all the different stamps because he kept going back and forth between the East and the West and carrying people out through his car. But you also heard much sadder stories concerning separation of parents from children and missing children and the inability for families to stay in contact because of the East and West divide. And I think, you know, we think about World War II and we think about the Cold War in America a lot in the context of Americans and, you know, like things like the Red Scare, but I think we don't think so much about the people it directly affected in Germany and the populations in those areas. I think, you know, it's been sensationalized, the Cold War, a lot through different media forms. And so, you know, being able to see that some of those stories are true, but also kind of seeing the sadder aspects of it was eye-opening. And yeah, so. Also, the way that it's positioned kind of within this city block in a busy road and Checkpoint Charlie still persists as a monument is really interesting. The museum was pretty busy with many people speaking, you know, all these different languages, which is nice to see that these things are still being accepted as part of history. And I think in Berlin, they have like the East Side Gallery, and they have like the bricks that show where the wall once was. But seeing the Checkpoint Charlie, which was something that for a lot of people was a place that was symbolic of anxiety or stress or fear, whether they were escaping or helping people escape, or even just, you know, like the people that were describing their mothers that were going through and how that was really kind of a scary experience for them. And that place that was once, you know, this grand source of fear now just like is a building, and how the power of place is really granted by a person's perception. And I think it kind of goes back, I talked about Doreen Massey a lot, but I really love her. She's my favorite geographer. And she wrote a piece on places existing not only in place, but also in time. And the historicity of those places is assigned to them, and that's what gives them their significance. And so I really loved thinking about Checkpoint Charlie in kind of the context of her writing, and how we can see that the history of the place that was once, you know, this place of fear is now a place of remembrance, and really kind of honor of the courage of all of the brave people who were helping people escape or escaping themselves, and how Checkpoint Charlie served as a place where they could start a new life and a better life, but also still, you know, experience like the stressors and anxieties they have and the difficulties with maybe leaving people behind or their lives behind. From there, we got to enjoy a beautiful, although slightly chilly, walk around Berlin and see some more sighting. There's actually only one building and then just like a very large mirror. See, Sydney, if you walk into it, you can just keep walking. Oh, there it is. These older buildings actually seemed more rare in Berlin than I would have thought that they would be due to the effects of World War II. We also stopped in at a Volkswagen showroom where we got to see some of their older cars as well as their prototype for an electric van, which I think is so cool. Though also, we've talked a lot about Volkswagen in some of my sustainability classes or environmental courses because of the scandal that took place, I believe in 2016, where they were lying about their green standards for their vehicles. So I have some skepticism when it comes to Volkswagen and their intentions. I know they did a lot of rebranding. I mean, they're originally, not super positive things associated with them, but they really created their own branding, and through that, they were able to find a really strong foothold in the American economy. And through their production and marketing now, which is really focused on nostalgia, that is such it's associated kind of as a piece of Americana, which I think is super interesting. Even like the Outer Banks, which is a really popular show that is like very much like they drive one of these vans like the Friends, and it's like a very big like van. And I think of that too like with Scooby-Doo. And wait, I actually have a Scooby-Doo and the Mystery Machine, because that's also kind of like a Volkswagen Bug. So kind of how it's be able to be a piece of commercial product that's from Germany, it's kind of become so strongly integrated into American culture and nostalgia. In one of my anthropology courses focused on globalization, we actually specifically talked about Volkswagen, and I can't remember who the author was now, but there was this concept of love marks, which the consumer kind of forms a deep bond with the product and kind of gives it some agency in its life. And so it was cool to see how Volkswagen is kind of displayed, and how the vehicle, like the white one, which reminded me of Herbie Fully Loaded, which, giving agency to a vehicle, making it have magical powers of humans, is a good example of a love mark. And if I could have a driver's license, I would definitely get one of the e-vans. From there, we did some more sightseeing, including seeing the Capitol building and where the Chancellor lives. That's where the Chancellor lives. And this is the Capitol building, Parliament building. So now that we know where they live, we can go kidnap the Chancellor. An occupational hazard of being a tourist that you see other people doing touristy things, including taking pictures in the U-Bahn. She's serving. After our walk around Berlin, we headed to the dinner place where we were able to have one final meal together, and we talked a lot about our big takeaways from the Maymester. I was able to learn a lot from my classmates over the course of this Maymester through their different experiences, like Sarah talking about the business aspect or Cecilia talking about the aspects of German and Russian relations. So it was really cool to hear everybody's different thoughts and feelings on the issues that we talked about. Also, please tell Corinna that we love the cards. Those were very sweet of her to make. Once again, we had some trouble getting the bill. I will now insert a TikTok that I feel like we kept referencing, just for general knowledge purposes.
It was too good. Let's get the bill per.
She's going. I feel like Louis Theroux, documentary filmmaker.
She was coming, but then she got mad when she saw you.
So I'm gonna do a dinner review. It was very yummy, very delicious. Ooh. Dessert. Okay, we're gonna.
Oh, I really hope there's more.
Yeah, know what that means. Since it was our last night all in Berlin, we decided to go out and just hang out and get some drinks. There was a football game going on, so it was a little bit busy, but we did find a place where we could sit outside. And it was a little bit expensive, but it wasn't that much worse than the US, which I thought it was interesting how cheap Germany actually was.
Barely tastes. More like nectarine juice. That stuff we had at the hostel. It basically tasted like that. I don't think there's alcohol.
Review?
That went to my eyeball.
Did you try yours?
Not yet. It's hitting.
The strawberry daiquiri gets about a 9 out of 10 from me.
How strong is it?
That was the end of our official Maymester. The next day we had in Berlin, we went to the Tiergarten and inside the church before the next day getting up super early, going by the U-Bahn to ourselves to the airport, and finally getting home. I still have the final reflection assignment, so I won't go too general on things, but I just want to say that I really enjoyed this Maymester. I would highly recommend it to people of all different disciplines, And I do feel like I genuinely got to learn about German culture through the host family mostly, but also through the contact that we had with people like Yetta and Andrea. And it was really a wonderful time. I will cherish my memories forever, and I'm glad I have them here on video. And so yeah, so that's my reflection for today. Also, I'm recording this after, but I got my cast off, so that's exciting.